Howdy everyone. Alright, so the wingtip is now back on the wing. You can see that there are no clecos, so this is screwed completely to the wing as if it was ready for flight. The wingtip has been cleaned and trimmed, and this is the interface, if you will, between the aileron and the wingtip. So it was this area back here that needed trim and along this edge so that there's clearance with the aileron. And I did the same thing, of course, on the back side here. So this wingtip is now completely trimmed. It's clean. It fits fairly good. All of this area through here, top and bottom, is just fine. It's just around the nose here. This is the bottom of the wing again. It's just this area right here. This isn't as good as it could be. There's a lot of ways to solve that. I chose not to do any of them. I'm just going to leave it like it is. But the top side is just fine. You can see that this fit through here is super nice all the way around, just about to where you get to the very front most leading point. From there back, it opens up a little bit. But the rest of it is fine. I'm not going to freak out over it. So that's just the way it's going to be. So now that I've got the wing tip trimmed and fitted correctly, and it is now done, there's no reason to keep the aileron in place. So I'm going to go ahead and take the aileron off. I'm going to leave the wing tip completely screwed on as if it was ready for flight. Aileron will come off. And then I'm going to start fitting this filler rib that's going to go into the wingtip. With this aileron off, I'll have access into here. And again, you want the tip completely screwed on as if it was ready for flight, because you want this trailing edge area of the wingtip to be the correct shape before you start fitting the filler. So I'm going to leave this in, take the aileron off, and then I'll come back and we'll start fitting a filler rib inside the tip. Talk to you guys later. Howdy everyone. So the aileron is now off, and you can see that I have free access to the inside of the wing tip. This is the filler that I like to use. It's foam, and I believe I bought it from Aircraft Spruce. If you go back through my channel and find when I had closed off the ends, I think it was the horizontal stabilizer, I talk about the exact foam that I use. This is the same stuff. This is actually cut from the same piece that I had used way back then. What's really nice about this foam, besides it being super light and it cuts really well, the two-part epoxy won't affect it. It won't melt it. So you'll see here when I get to it, I'm going to mix up some two-part epoxy with a little bit of flocks to make it thick. And that's what I use to permanently affix this to the wingtip. And I'm just about to that point now. I've got this one cut to size. And what I'm going to do next is probably mix up that solution and then install it. Before I do that, a couple of things. You want it a little bit undersized because you want that epoxy to be between the foam and the wingtip, but you don't want, or the wing, this part of the wingtip. You want to make sure that you get that epoxy in between the two, but you don't necessarily want to spread this out because that will distort the way that this lays with the aileron. So I make this a little bit short or a little bit undersized, the foam, and I'll coat the edge of the foam with the epoxy flocks. And then I'll put it in here, and then I'll just kind of move it back, and it kind of will wedge itself a little bit back in here into the wingtip. But you don't want to jam it in there. You just want to work it back easy without distorting the shape of the tip itself. So that's what I'm going to do next. The other thing is, like I had done on my horizontal stabilizer when I used the foam, I'll exaggerate this a little bit. Move this, have this recessed a little bit. Again, this is an exaggeration just so you can see what I'm talking about. Recess it a little bit when you put it in, and then we'll come back and we'll fill in this gap. This whole thing will get filled with clear epoxy, and that will self-level and it will fill all of this in and it will seal everything really nice. And again, if you want to get a preview of that, you can go to the horizontal stabilizer, because that's what I did with it. But for now, I'm going to take this out and I'm going to go ahead and put the epoxy flocks around the edges and stick this back in there. All right. Talk to you guys later. All right, so you can see now that the foam is in the wingtip. Like I said, this is held in place with 2-part epoxy and some flocks just to thicken it up so that it doesn't run all over the place. And again, the foam is recessed into the wingtip a little bit. That way I can fill this whole thing in with epoxy and seal it. You'll note that there's a hole here, a pretty good sized gap. I am not concerned about that. I didn't want to cover up this nut plate with any kind of foam or epoxy, just in case this has to be removed. But the way that it sits now, if you can imagine this being tilted right side up and filled with 2-part epoxy, of course the epoxy is going to run off of this edge. So you have to make a wall on the end here so that this is more like a tray. And I'll show you that on the other wingtip because I just did that. So this is the other wingtip. This is the one that I had done quite a while ago. Again, foam recessed from the edge, 2-part epoxy is holding it in place. And I stuck this piece here on the end, and you'll note that the bottom of this piece is even with the edge of the tip, and the top of the piece, hello, let me back up here so you can actually see, the top of the piece is also even with the edge of the wingtip. So now that creates a well, if you will, a tray in here, so that again, when this is flipped this way and I pour the epoxy in it, it will just pool inside of this well and it will self-level and it will seal everything really nice. Now I'm still going to have a gap here. Again, going back to the other wing, if you can imagine, that barricade's going to be right here, but there's all of this in here is still going to be open. And I'm okay with that because air can get in there and it can breathe. And I made myself a note here. I'm going to put a drain hole back here on the bottom, obviously. My plane is a tail dragger plane, and again the wing is upside down, so if you can imagine the wing being right side up with the dihedral of the wing and the rake of the rake of the tail dragger, this corner is going to be the low spot for the wingtip. So if water were to somehow get in here when the plane is on the ground at rest, it would all run to this corner. So I'm going to put a 1/4-inch hole, I believe, here somewhere on both wingtips. So that's that. I gotta let this set up. I don't want to mess with taking the wingtip off or anything until this is completely cured, because I don't want this to separate or move the shape. I don't want to change the shape. This is going to sit overnight. That one over there, I had just put that vertical piece to finish off the well. That's also got to sit overnight. So sometime tomorrow, I will probably figure out how to get these flipped upright and level so I can fill them with epoxy. But that will be tomorrow. I don't know what I'll do next today. Let me figure that out and I'll get back to you guys here in a minute.